We are live. Well, Lizzie, thank you for joining me with Secure Insights this week.
Thank you so much, James, for having me.
Not at all, not at all. For our listeners' benefit, I'm joined this week by Lizzie Nammour of Telescope, CEO and founder. So, for anyone that doesn't know, are you okay to give us a quick run through of your background and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I founded Telescope. We're a data security company. Prior to that, I was at Airbnb on their data security team where I built their internal data protection platform.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So a lot to unpack here, especially in today's day
Yeah.
and age, and having played in this little world for a while. So, I guess what was the moment when the whole telescope idea came into being, and what you had that sort of wow, I need to build this.
Yeah, 100%. So I was working on this problem for 4 years at Airbnb, helping them understand where they're storing sensitive data and comply with privacy regulations and for security controls. I guess after 4 years, we posted a few blogs on our work, and we had security engineers reach out saying they were building similar things at other companies. We had VCs reach out asking whether we wanted to start a company around this. So that kind of gave me the idea of like, hey, this problem stems outside of just Airbnb, and it's a very common problem that most companies with data are facing.
Hmm. And I
Yeah.
guess then you kind of touched on this next question there, but it was sort of a personal problem you were feeling, and then a case of, oh, other
Yeah,
people are having the same issue.
exactly. And I think a lot of people also had the same issue where they were trying all the tools that were available in the market, weren't happy with it. So it was kind of like, I need to build this internally. And they kind of went that approach. And so they would start reaching out after reading our blogs around how we built it, so that they could also replicate that internally.
Understood. And
Yeah.
broadly speaking, we can get into a bit more granular detail perhaps because the
Yeah.
data security space it's been around a long time. There's some very, very
Yes.
big brand names in there, publicly traded organizations that specialize in this field. So I guess where does Telescope fit in this whole picture, and what are you doing maybe differently or fixing the problem in
Yeah.
a better way maybe? What's the what's the
Yeah, I
approach there?
guess that there's two things. One is we want to show relevant risk or relevant data, not just helping them understand where they're storing any type of data. I think a big issue you'll see with other platforms in the market is that you'll connect them to your data and they'll surface maybe hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of different data points saying, hey, you have PII here, or you have sensitive data there. But in reality, you might need to be storing PII in this particular location. Um, and the other issue with the tools as well is that they don't actually help you fix anything. They just
Mm.
surface the problem and they don't help you remediate it. So a lot of companies would rather not know they have a problem if they can't fix it, because then they're kind of liable, if something happens because they knew they had the issue. So at Telescope, I think what we're focusing on is how do we showcase relevant information so that you know that this is truly a risk, and then how do we actually help you fix that risk automatically without manual overhead.
Nice. So you've got that whole
Yeah,
context piece alongside your, is it agentic
exactly.
AI that's involved here?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like agents that we've trained that can understand what that company specifically cares about, like with their data security policies, data management policies, data retention policies. And then we can automatically have these agents decide what the remediation should be
Wow. Okay,
based on the
cool.
issue that we're finding. Yeah.
Has this whole kind of space been blown up through the introduction of things like Copilot, for example?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been mainly like that's been driving the need and the urgency for software like us. Because if people turn on Copilot and they have all of this legacy data that's shared broadly across the company, that can pose a lot of risks because people can search for very sensitive information and gain access to it. So, yes, definitely. I think people are looking for tools like ours before they can turn on AI platforms like Copilot or
Mm.
ChatGPT. Yeah.
And I guess like zooming out a little bit from purely
Yeah.
Telescope and your technology, but the space as a whole, this whole sort of realm of data security or
Yeah.
security posture management, like where are we as a sort of an industry on that? It seems like there's a big spectrum of
Yeah.
DSPM solutions, and some help certain areas, some maybe don't. And then also, like if you don't have your data security posture management in order, where are the risks? What can happen if that goes west?
Yeah, and I think that's why there's been an urgency introduced by AI because people have been storing petabytes of data for the past I don't know, 10, 20 years. There
Mm.
was never an urgency to buy data security solutions. I think AI introduces that urgency because AI can kind of make sense of all the data that a company has. So whereas in the past, it would be hard for like a human to find a needle in the haystack. Like, how is someone going to find one social security number within billions of S3 objects?
Mm.
But now AI makes it much easier to surface that sensitive, critical, overly exposed information. And that's why we're seeing kind of an urgency of people adopting data security software versus 5 years ago. It wasn't that urgent of a problem necessarily outside of privacy compliance.
I
Yeah.
got you. I got you. So you have
Yeah.
all these, like the visibility is there, great, but unless you have
Yeah.
context and the ability to sift through that quickly, it's
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And AI introduces more risk with that large data set, if that makes sense. Yeah.
mm, that's interesting. And then the obviously
Yeah.
the agentic AI, the trained agentic AI on the remediation piece must be of huge help, of course. Do
For
you
sure.
guys,
For sure.
what are your customers saying so far? And just for context, and feel free to sort of come in and correct me on this. But
Yeah.
at the time of recording, it's you've just done your Series A. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Hopefully that's that momentum wave is still flying. You know, securing customers.
For
Is it
sure.
over 30 million raised so far? So in
20. Oh, yeah. 32 so far. Yeah.
32 million, and in three
Yeah.
years. So like
Yeah.
come out swinging. You know, so there's clearly
Yeah.
uptake, and yeah, it's clearly a
For
good
sure.
reception.
Yeah.
So what are the customers saying? And then I guess you must come into sort of misconceptions of, oh no, we've already got X data security solution. We don't need this. Maybe I don't know. What are the conversations
Yeah,
been?
I think again, it's the same two problems. One is DSPMs show too much information and not relevant information. That's one piece that we're fixing. And then the second one is how do we actually help remediate and yeah, fix the issues that a DSPM could surface, whether that's redacting sensitive data from places where it shouldn't be, getting rid of old or stale data, yeah, deleting files, moving files around, revoking access. So
Hmm.
yeah, I would say it's those two issues that people are struggling with DSPMs is one, it's showing too much data that isn't relevant, so relevant information kind of gets lost, and two is
Hmm.
it doesn't actually fix anything. And so that's why we've seen a lot of people have DSPMs, but they don't actually use it or it's not fully operational within a company. And so it's pretty easy to replace tools when they're not fully embedded within their workflows.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it a sort of a conversation you're having with, I'm assuming your sort of ideal customer is or CISO or CTO leadership types of person?
I would say it's been mainly CISO.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like data governance, data management, but I would say mainly the CISO would be the buyer for sure.
Understood. And is that
Yeah.
CISO typically sort of aligned to the way of you're thinking of, I've got a DSPM, it's doing some stuff, but it's not quite working? Or is the conversation more of a, I've already got DSPM in place, we're good for Telescope's
I
product?
mean, you will always have that. That's like, I'm never going to say like, oh, 100% every time, even if they have the DSPM, they're open to replacing it. But I say
Mm.
very frequently, um, a lot of security teams now don't have many people on their teams, right? So they don't have like hundreds of people to sift through the alerts that the
Mm.
DSPMs generate. So I think CISOs are really focusing on like, how do I operationalize all of the tools that I have? And so what we're selling kind of resonates with them is it's end to end instead of generating more work for their team.
Mm. That
Yeah.
seems to be a big flavor, I think. Even for 2025, it seems to be a case of like we've done the age of visibility and bringing up all of these alerts and misconfigurations or whatever it might be. But
Exactly.
what you now do about them seems to be a real pattern, not just in
For
DSPM, but
sure.
generally, yeah.
For sure. And how do I go about fixing it with a very small team? Yeah.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one point earlier around just an example of like if you have old or stale data on your
Yeah.
system somewhere, have you got maybe like a real world example without naming any names of what can happen if this goes wrong, the cost of not solving the problem?
I think there's two issues of like keeping old data. One is you're just incurring cost within the storage system,
Mm.
which is why a lot of people now with budget cuts or like if they're focusing on cost savings, that's one thing they want to solve. And then two, obviously like stale and sensitive data that you no longer need is just risky. So sometimes people will have files from like 20, 30 years ago that are really sensitive that they still didn't know they had and they don't need anymore. And the question is like, why is it still here? How can we just get rid of it? Yeah.
And those files from 20, 30 years ago, I mean,
Yeah.
what's likely to be on, what could be on them that could cause a hiccup?
I mean, depends on the company, right? It
Okay.
could be very, it could be, I don't know, schematics or intellectual property that they had from 20 years ago. Maybe it's no longer relevant today, but it
Mm.
does, I don't know, reveal some sort of information. So I guess what we're seeing is customers want to protect two types of data. One is like customer data, and then the second one is like intellectual property or material non-public information. So depending on the type of data, it can cause different risk, whether it's reputational risk, IP risk, or just leakage of sensitive customer data.
I got you. And I was having a
Yeah,
look at some of the sort of the case studies online. So in my brain, I was thinking, okay, cool, industries which are highly regulated, perhaps, the whole
yeah,
HIPAA or financial data and so on and
yeah.
so forth. But, looking at some of the case studies, it's not just that space. It's the
No.
Atlantic, it's GoFundMe.
Exactly. And I think the thing is, it's a lot of now we're seeing a lot of traction because of the way that we can classify data with companies that want to protect intellectual property, whether that's government contractors, manufacturing companies. They have a lot of sensitive data that isn't just traditional PII, PCI. It's more like, hey, these are our financial projections, or this is proprietary, I don't know, schematics of a new power plant, for example. So we're seeing customers want to protect that type of information versus just consumer credit card numbers, for example, which are easier to find.
Wow. And
Yeah.
when you first set out on this journey back in 2022,
Yeah.
was the product we have now, the sort of the initial vision around that, the visibility, but then the agentic piece as well? How did this kind of evolve?
No, it's definitely evolved. I think we started with just visibility, and we also had APIs so that our customers could kind of extract all of the information and automate their own remediation on top of us. I think what we quickly found is that customers wanted the remediation within the platform because one, they didn't have time to script, maybe they didn't have the technical talent to script and enforce the remediation. I think APIs are really interesting on paper, but they don't actually get that used in production. And so that kind of shaped the way that our product evolved, is seeing how our customers used it, what they wanted, and kind of iterated from there.
So there was a lot of sort of
Yeah.
not a lot of, but some pivoting maybe along the way of.
Yeah, yeah, or not pivoting, just like seeing like, okay, we have this visibility platform. How do we make sure that they use what we're surfacing? Whether that's remediating within the platform, seeing what they do outside of the platform, and just trying to evolve our product in that way.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of
Yeah.
a part two to that question would be along this
Yeah.
journey, has there been maybe like one or two sort of simple things that you felt are just sort of like a standard in this space that customers have been very impressed by?
In terms of like, what do they like about our platform?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of something
Yeah.
that you would think is sort of standard. Oh, you obviously need X, but look at all the other fancy stuff it does. But customers have said, oh, actually, X is really good. This is unreal.
Yeah, I think people really like how we deploy, which is interesting. Like, I never thought that that would be a mode of like, hey, like deployment of our software, but
Okay.
that's been a big selling point of like our software can be deployed and be fully air gapped. So if a customer doesn't want us to see their data or wants to kind of run our software within their environment without us having any access, they can do so. So that's been like a big thing that customers really care about, especially in like regulated industries,
Mm.
or if they're selling to regulated industries. And then again, I think the remediation has been like the biggest piece, like especially like redaction, because a lot of potentially like people could build automations around revoking access or deleting data, but the redaction piece is where like our sweet sauce or like secret sauce is. So people really like that too.
What's the redaction piece then? How does that differ from deletion or
Yeah, so for
blockage?
example, let's say, James, you start putting very sensitive data into Slack or like a credit card number, or yes, I don't know, you start, yeah, divulging very secret information within your message. Instead of deleting the entire message, we would be able to redact only the part that's very sensitive. And replacing that with either the word like credit card number, if it was a credit card number, or XXX, like redacting the last four. Customers can kind of like customize how they want the redaction to work.
Wow. So I guess it's
Yeah.
automatically putting in a layer of protection for everybody.
Exactly, exactly. And in real time, I think that's also the big difference is we're not redacting it like 10 days later. We're redacting it within a second of it being posted. So people don't have
That's
time to extract the information.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned around the air gap piece then. So
Yeah,
and you mentioned it's it's key for if organizations don't want us to have a view on their data. How does that work if you're then sort of doing the whole remediation piece as well?
they do it all. Like so they're running our entire software. We don't see it. We don't have access to it, but they can define all of these remediation policies within our platform, and the platform just runs in their environment. Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
From the outside in, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm a CISO and I'm looking at a relatively new DSPM product on the market, the
Yeah.
trust element's obviously going to be a big question mark. Does that make it easier to say, look, we're not actually going to look at any of your data?
For sure, exactly. It's a big selling point, especially if, for example, if we're selling to like a government contractor or the government and we are not FedRAMP compliant, being able to deploy in a fully air-gapped environment, just we don't need to be FedRAMP compliant because that works. So it kind of checks the box for a lot of customers because they don't have to trust us. They run the entire software themselves. So yeah, there's no trust needed because it's just run by them.
Wow. And then I'm
Yeah.
assuming the whole onboarding of Telescope is very, very fluid. It's not sort of a weeks-long
Yeah, it's
process.
super fluid, super easy. Yeah, we're happy to also help do that air gap deployment by flying to the customer's like location. But otherwise it's like relatively very simple to deploy and operate. Yeah.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
want to ask you about the scaling and the growth piece and some stuff we touched
Yeah,
on earlier.
yeah.
Just before I do that, I guess just to get your take, what's like, I don't know, taking North America, what's your kind of take on where are we at from a data security perspective at the moment? Are we pretty mature or is there still a whole lot of work to be done?
I think like people are starting to either have a DSPM or looking to buy a DSPM or a data security platform. Currently, I still think people are in early maturity of operationalizing a data security platform, but people are starting to buy or like realize that data security is an important problem to solve. So I think we're kind of like midway.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Encouraging. Encouraging.
yeah,
I think from people I've spoken to as well, it's like the AI sort of boom, whilst very helpful in a lot of areas, has really encouraged a bit of a microscope to look at this space in particular and saying that we need to really level up here or we're going to be left behind.
exactly, exactly.
Cool. So scaling and growth. Let's get on to some exciting stuff.
Yeah,
So I guess coming from a pretty heavy engineering remit within Airbnb and then to this
yeah.
journey here, like talk us through what that was like just in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting journey learning as you go because I think there's different phases of the company. Like when you first start a company, like as the founder or CEO, that doesn't really mean anything. You're just building the software and just interviewing potential prospects or customers to see like what do they want to see within your platform. So you're still kind of like in the technical hat. I think after that, then you start to have to transition into a salesperson, which is pre-Series A. And then now post Series A, I think you need to transition into like how do I run an actual company versus like how do I just sell the software that I built. So it's really interesting different phases of like the company life cycle and what the CEO role kind of means at each phase.
Indeed, yeah. So even in
Yeah,
that short sentence there, you've just named what
yeah,
three pretty well-defined,
yeah,
chunky roles. The
yeah,
development, the
yeah,
sales, and then the CEO.
yeah.
Who who guides you through that? Is it like a sort of a guidebook you can read, or is it just a
I mean, no, you
trial and
just learn
error?
as you go. Obviously, you have a lot of support. Like our VCs have been really great. Our advisors have been awesome. Talking to other founders that are like maybe a step or two ahead of you also really helps. Honestly. And then you just learn as you go, I feel like. Yeah,
That's cool. What's
yeah.
I don't know if I can ask this on here, but is there a role in there you prefer, or just love all of it, maybe?
I think it's interesting because I like the learning piece, and then it's cool that after you learn and like you master a specific skill, then you can transition to a different skill. So I think that's the fun part is the transition to me and having to learn something completely new that I might be terrible at and have to become good at. Yeah,
Love that. That's cool.
yeah.
In the early days, when was the sort of the first signal, I guess, that you got of, oh, we could really have something here?
Yeah, I think it wasn't in the early days. It was probably like last year. So a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think you can really feel when like the market is pulling something from you versus like you're trying to like push something onto the market. And so I think once we started to kind of see, okay, like most calls are turning into POCs or like we're getting like our messaging is resonating, I think you can really feel it. It's not like I can't give you like numbers or anything. It's just like a feeling that you see when like it's things are starting to resonate. And so it was really exciting for us. And it mainly happened last year, I would say. Like
That's
very like late last year, December. Yeah.
wow. And in the lead
Yeah.
up to that, was there kind of elements of sort of self-doubt, I guess? I don't want to get too deep on this podcast, of course, but
Of course.
let's keep it happy. But
No, of course. I think the thing is like with startups, you just have to stay alive until like you figure it out. So I think like that's just like the mindset that you have to keep like in your head is like let's just keep going until like you can't anymore. So yeah, and hopefully things work along the way. Yeah,
hmm. How
yeah,
did you find the whole like VC getting funding, advisory piece? Because just and the reason I'm asking is that we speak to an awful lot of founders that are
yeah,
maybe had pre-seed or maybe not just there just yet. They've got some really cool ideas, very strong engineers, pretty good with people, but this whole world is just alien
yeah.
completely.
I mean, it is. It's a very different game, right? If you're a software engineer, like you don't really understand what VCs want to hear about, what are they looking for when you pitch.
Mm,
Um, I do think it gets slightly easier as you have more VCs in your court, like your seed, pre-seed investors will help you get the A, for example,
agree.
because they want to be supportive investors and they know what those investors at that stage want to hear or like what they want to see so you can work towards those milestones. But I would say for us, for example, pre-seed or seed was probably like the hardest like raise to get because one, I had no idea what I was doing, and then two, um you don't have like people in your camp that support you that much because you don't have that network yet.
Mm.
So I think it does get easier once you do have that network and you start to know what people want to see and hear when you're pitching.
And what is that at that kind of pre-seed or seed stage? Was there a few standout things that were becoming
I
pretty
mean, it might
common?
have changed. I don't know what it's like today in this new like AI era.
Mm,
But I guess like at our when we were raising our pre-seed, it was mainly like how many customers are going to try your product? How many customers are you building the product with? What types of customers are they? So for example, if you have enterprises, it's amazing.
mm,
And then again, like why are you different than the other people in the market? And it has to be like a real reason, not just like something that doesn't really matter or just like a technical thing.
mm.
It's kind of like why do you see the market differently? And then yeah. And then I guess it also depends on the founder. So if the founder has experience or has a particular point of view that their experience brought them, then it might be easier to raise a pre-seed with no revenue. But
Mm.
if the founder doesn't have much experience in the space that they're building the product in, then I would say having revenue helps a lot because that is more proof points.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I've spoken to a few founders recently that they're being asked for revenue, and it's like, well, to do that, we need a bit of investment behind us. So it's
Yeah.
this whole chicken
Yeah.
or egg thing, which must be
It is.
so hard to balance, especially if it's your
It,
baby. You
it
know, you've
is
built this thing, you're
for
behind
sure.
it, you've poured blood, sweat,
Yeah.
and tears.
For sure, 100%. It's kind of like they want to see everything, but you'd have nothing to be able to prove that everything. But I think it's just like get a bit of revenue, get traction. The names of the companies matter a lot also. So I think just put yourself out there and try to sell something that you have or sell a vision, and then hopefully that generates revenue, and then you can kind of raise money off those tailwinds. Yeah,
Mm. Sounds like the
yeah.
VCs could buy into, your journey and that you as a person just as much as they could do with, ARR and such.
For sure. I think if you have experience in the field that you're building in, I think it matters a lot, yeah, to investors because they have more trust that you see the world slightly differently and the
Mm.
way you see the world makes sense because you've experienced the problems that you're facing, yeah, that you're solving for.
Yeah, I've been on the other end
Yeah,
of this problem. Trust me, it needs fixing.
yeah,
And here's why. Yeah,
yeah,
makes sense.
exactly. Yeah,
Makes sense. So
yeah.
tremendous growth already. What does the next year, 2 years look like for Telescope?
I think really exciting. I mean, we're hiring a lot. We're all in New York in office, so it's a really cool culture. I think hiring, making sure we build again the first agentic data security platform and deliver on that vision. And yeah, just keep growing, honestly. Yeah.
Nice. And are
Yeah.
we able to talk about any sort of enhancements to the products or exciting things coming in that pipe, or is it a case of watch this space and you'll see?
I think we'll be making a bunch of releases in the next few months. So yeah, stay tuned. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And
Yeah.
I guess just lastly, what are the trends you're going to see or we're going to see, next year, for example, that might influence this space heavily or change the way we think about things?
Yeah, I think it's just a bunch of convergence. I feel like there's next gen DLPs that are coming in, but in
Mm.
my mind, DLP, data security, data management is just one big, it's the same problem that you're trying to fix, right? One is finding sensitive data, and then the second one is remediating it, whether it's data in transit, data at rest, real time, historical. I kind of see this all into one space as well. So people try to kind of segregate the market into DSPM, DLP, but in reality, it's just all just data security. Yeah,
Mm. It does seem to be that way. I think
yeah,
looking into this
yeah.
space, whichever report you read or whatever list is generated by whatever
Analyst or
industry
whatever.
analyst,
Yeah,
yes, that's what I was looking
yeah,
for. It can differ,
yeah,
but no, it sounds like a hell of
for
an
sure.
exciting space to be, and here's
Awesome.
to much more success.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Thank you for fielding the questions. Let's speak again soon.